Good day, everyone, and Merry Christmas, Happy New Year's. The reason I wrote this article is because Patrice Porter, who helps thought the original Christmas story that I wrote was a bit too, perhaps, thoughtful and made one feel rather sad. And I didn't want this Christmas season to go by with a sad ending. And so I wrote this one. And it was brought to my attention by a higher authority that I had made the right choice. Because as I wrote the very line about the day that the bells of Christmas Day, as I wrote typed in the very words Christmas Day, the bells of Cambridge at that exact moment, not a moment before, a moment later, exploded in my ear. And I too felt revived. People always ask me, what do I do for my Christmas holidays and so forth? I spin them into stories that will hopefully last forever. And I'm going to ask you to listen carefully to this. It's written by a Cambridge man, me, about a Cambridge man, Longfellow, about Cambridge residents, for me in the Blue Room, and for Longfellow in the Longfellow house. This is as close to you get as a perfect fit between subject, author, of course, the lyric poet himself. I heard the bells on Christmas Day. Christmas Eve 2015, God is not dead, nor doth he sleep. Cambridge, 1:17 a.m., 69 degrees Fahrenheit, 9 miles per hour, humidity, 94%. People ask me all the time, and the occasions when I add the time, the degrees of Fahrenheit, and so on. Why do I do that? I want to fix this episode as a moment of humanity. It happened in an exact place, with exact people at an exact time. I am sitting at my desk in one of the most beautiful rooms on earth, the Blue Room. Here, on my well-laden shelves, reside the thoughts of generations of my peers and colleagues, thoughts all through all the lands and ages, each one necessary for the value and impact of the whole. We gather here, all of us, to refresh ourselves in the peace and serenity of this place, for I insist that here peace and serenity, diversity and tolerance shall reign supreme. On this day, Christmas Eve in the morning, we are thinking of our dear friend and colleague, Cambridge neighbor, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, 1807 to 1882. I can tell you a great deal about this great lyric poet of the great republic, 1,000 miles from where his swiftly moving pen enlivened each page. In Prairie, Illinois, he brought me through the magic of my young mother's voice to the shores of Gitche Gumee by the shining Big Sea water, thence to the wigwam of Nokomis, daughter of the moon, Nokomis. She and Longfellow, reader and author, are so intertwined in my mind that remembering the one necessarily reminds me of the other. They are irresistible together. They took me on Paul Revere's epic ride of 75 into eternity, a determined patriot with freedom enough for all world distressed in his saddlebags. And they made me feel the glistening muscles and smell the acrid sweat of the village blacksmith, whose shop I could walk to, though the chestnut tree is sadly gone in fact. Glad to exist forever, thanks to the poet who saw a story in the bellows constantly, at work at the forge, creating a nation more strong and notable every single day. Longfellow was the joyous poet of this blacksmith, this forge, this great nation, attending a building from sea to shining sea, never ceasing, never tiring, never flagging, never quitting, never quavering. The whole chronicled by Longfellow, Derided as the poet of the masses by certain envious literati, a criticism he wore with panache and festivity, and the respect of every Yankee, as his squibs fetched by mid-century as much as $3,000, an astonishing amount for a mere poet. If there had ever been a poet so well heeled, able to live so well before, no one could instantly name him. In 1860, this paragon of heart-touching poets was living a life anyone might envy. He resided in the grandest mansion in Cambridge, once the great domicile of Tory John Vassall, a merchant whose loyalty to king and crown cost him beyond dear. George and Martha Washington made it their headquarters, while George created an army of farmers, so powerful at the end that the greatest nation on earth bowed low before their majesty. The world indeed turned upside down. Next, in 1843, Brattle Street and the imposing mansion given as a wedding present by the bride's affluent father welcomed the prolific poet, his gracious wife Fanny, and his soon-to-be numerous progeny, 2 sons and 4 daughters. It was one of the young nation's greatest romances. It became, and all too soon, one of the greatest tragedies. Whereas, where joy ceases and can no longer be even imagined, this is where tragedy begins. Death abides in the hymeneal chamber of love and life. I have began in an instant, was relived every day, every minute of his remaining life. The death in 1861 of loving Fanny by burn sustained in a freak accident. 1 minute the highest bliss known, the next unspeakable pain. It destroyed every happy thought and made a mockery of all the joy that went before and could never be again. I have on divers occasions visited what is today preserved as the Longfellow Washington's headquarters National Historic Site, the sumptuous edifice that began its life in 1759 as Craigie House. Here I have attended concerts in the gardens, gathered the first lilacs, and drank wildly of their exuberant food, scent, and peered over the white picket fence, wondering at the exalted beings who had in their time claimed all this as their earthly paradise. Would I wondered, write such verses to beguile a great nation? And would I, for all that the words might come, yet also face eternal grief beyond reckoning, no antidote to be had? Such thoughts come easily and unbidden to poets who wander in the moonlight on Brattle Street, where the great house with its stately beauty yet fails to blot out the tragedy that still reverberates within. I have known such unspeakable tragedy too, which words can never assuage. They return each day, most of all at Christmas. So do the blighted living feel the deep abiding power of the dead, our dead, for the ones we most loved hurt us the most deeply and forever, simply by leaving us. And we can do nothing about this final separation, this pain, nothing but submit and bow our heads in profound resignation. But the pain abides forever. This is the essential fact of the human condition, and it is bitter indeed. My last visit to this lordly residence, I made a special point of lingering in the couple's bedroom, where Fanny lingered for a handful of precious hours after being severely burnt, while putting locks of her children's hair into an envelope and attempting to seal it with hot sealing wax. Her dress caught fire, her shrieks awakening Longfellow, who was taking a nap just a few feet away. He rushed to her assistance, throwing a rug over her, which proved too small to stop the flames. Fanny had died while saving hair from each child. Instead, just a day later, each took a strand of her hair for remembrance. So she was buried on the 18th anniversary of her marriage. There you will find her in the Mount Auburn Cemetery, where in due course she was joined by husband, and where in due course I too shall reside for years. Thus the saddest event in the history of all the distinguished people who made this celebrated house a home continued to burn. By the time Longfellow got through to Fanny, both were badly burned. She dying the next morning of July 10th, 1861. He disfigured for life, some of his deep scars covered by the patriarchal guide, the beard he now adapted, giving him his trademark look. Park Service guide, whose objective was always moving the visitors through briskly and maintaining a strict schedule, tells the broad outline of his tale crisply and without any emotion whatsoever. The goal is management, not truth. To such guides I am anathema, for I ask many questions, good questions, and expect good answers, which all too often I do not get. My presence irks them, their presence irks me, who each understood the other perfectly. Thus the guide told me to come along long before I was able to do so. I am in search of veritas, truth, and this room where so much happened, good and bad, was there. The only eyewitness who saw it all. The hectoring guide didn't. That's why I moved slowly through this place of jumbled sensations, sensing the joys therein, but also overwhelmingly the terrible pain and grief so powerful and destructive. The great American poet Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, the essence of American optimism and determination, almost succumbed. His indomitable spirit crushed by a single word. Why? A question that all of us confront over and over again, never finding a satisfying answer. Not only the single word that perplexes, confuses, and angers. So it is for you and me and our struggles, so it was for Longfellow and his. His writing, the chronicle of a great nation, stopped. His thoughts bleak and pathetic. He was not only convinced he would never write again, but that the glorious lyric words and the works he had fashioned from them were so long, were as superficial and trivial as his critics said. Just so much forgettable dross, not a glimmer of eternity to be had. He decided to have his say on the matter before his more learned friends and colleagues had theirs. He dipped his pen into fresh ink as dark as the dross he would write from it. Hate is strong and mocks the song of peace on earth, goodwill to men. And as these caustic, despairing words were recorded, his head was bowed, his grief unfathomable, nothing left to live for. Then he heard the bells of Christmas Day, 1863. Glorious cacophony of bells from Harvard and every steeple alerting the citizens that yes, our Messiah was born. Dour, dismayed, desolate, Longfellow was so touched by their adamant certainty, he changed the message of his poem altogether. God is not dead, nor doth he sleep. The wrong shall fail, the right prevail, with peace on earth, goodwill to men. He wrote quickly, bold scrolls scrawled across the page, determined not to miss this rebirth, this reaffirmation. For the first time since his great tragedy, he felt, if not yet peace and hope, then at least their possibility. The bells of Christmas Day had done their work. As the tears cascaded down his scarred face, a remembrance of deep love, abiding through the ages to come. God had heard, God had not forgotten, God was here. Envoy. Poem written on Christmas Day in 1863 was first published in February 1865 in Our Young Folks as Christmas Bells. The heart of the nation went out to the grieving author, after all, and everyone, whatever their situation or station, had asked at one time or another the momentous question, why? He had laid his troubles before the world. The world responded with kindness, humanity, empathy, renewed admiration and love. Despite his thoughts of suicide, he came to see how selfish that would be given the universal plea that he heal, write, and live the great nation's great poet again. However, he was a man who had written but one love poem in his life. Of course, it went to Fanny, as did every thought and word, all dedicated to the great romance he had won and lost. Some years later, in 1872, English composer and organist John Baptiste Calkin came to read Longfellow's poem. Like all discerning readers, he felt the power of Longfellow's searing language, and he wrote the music with which the lyrics touches us so. You can find the moving result in any search engine. I prefer the version done expertly by the Norman Tabernacle Choir. Listen to it when the dawn comes up on Christmas Day and be comforted. I wish to say that at this point, just as I wrote that line, and be comforted, the bells of Cambridge burst upon me. And you could believe that God had heard. God had not forgotten. God was here. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year's to everyone who reads this live or with us for the years to come. God bless us all.